"I'll give $1,000 for anyone who can translate this sentence," shouted Richard Thornton, CEO of Thornton Global Consulting, shaking a sheet of paper in the air while laughing with disdain. "But I bet none of you, immigrants, cannot even understand what is written here." The conference room on the 42nd floor echoed with muffled laughs of executives. Sofia Mendoza, 34, discreetly cleaned the tables when she heard the challenge. For 3 years he had worked as a cleaning lady in that international consulting firm, invisible in the eyes of executives who treated people like her like furniture, useful, but disposable. "It's Sanskrit, isn't it?" murmured Thompson, vice president, examining the complex symbols recorded on aged parchment paper. "Impossible to translate without an academic expert with decades of experience." Richard nodded with arrogance, adjusting the fists of the personalized shirt. "Exactly. I received this from our biggest Indian client this morning. I need to know what it means before the meeting at 9 in the morning tomorrow, or we lost the $15 million contract. My official translator charges $5,000 and has no availability today." Sophia continued her methodical routine, but her eyes settled on paper for a few seconds. An almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, the same one that appeared when his cleaning colleagues made jokes about the intelligent bosses who didn't even know how to prepare a coffee without burning. "Perhaps we should hire an urgent professional translation company." Sarah, the executive secretary, nervously watches on her tablet while looking for online options. "There are 24-hour services that could solve this by midnight." "Please," Richard snorted, gesturing exaggeratedly. "It's just a few old symbols scribbled on an old roll. If it was so important, anyone minimally polite could decipher. But look at those who have been working here." He pointed discreetly towards the cleaning team. "Working, honest people. But we will be completely realistic about their obvious intellectual and educational limitations." What those arrogant executives could never imagine was that Sofia Mendoza had a doctorate in comparative and linguistic literature by the prestigious National University of Bogotá, spoke fluently 7 modern languages, dominated 3 dead languages, and had spent 2 intensive years studying old Sanskrit manuscripts at Nova Delhi before migrating to the United States in search of a better life to their 2 children. In the last 6 months, Sophia had noticed increasingly worrying signals in the company. East comments on "people of your type," cruel jokes about foreign accents during breaks, and increasing racial hostility disguised as an innocent humor. The week before, he had heard Thompson commenting on other managers about the silent invasion of immigrants stealing jobs that belonged to true Americans workers. $1,000, repeated Richard, shaking his head theatrically as he walked around the room like a peacock showing off his feathers. "I bet my Hermes wallet like our postgraduate managers could solve this millennial puzzles. Imagine these simple people who help us with cleaning, but obviously never had access to quality higher education." Marcus, another executive known for his controversial opinions, laughed loudly as he adjusted the Rolex clock on his wrist. "Richard, you're being too generous with this offer. $1,000 is literally more than these humble people earn in 2 months of honest work. It would be practically how to win the lottery for them." Sophia finished tidying up her leather chairs in absolute silence, her fingers lightly touching the cleaning stroller strap. For 3 long years had swallowed similar comments, systematic daily humiliations disguised as innocent sociological observations, always maintaining the unshakable dignity that your wise grandmother taught you. Piss. Let them underestimate you completely. True strength is born and grows exactly in silence, and when your time comes to shine, it will be absolutely devastating. Frankly, continued Richard, now clearly having fun with his own performance, it would be almost comical to see someone from this educational level trying to decipher texts that scholars take years to understand. It's like asking a child to solve aerospace engineering calculations. At that moment I accurately, while everyone discussed excitedly about the absolute impossibility of translation and made increasingly cruel jokes about the natural intellectual simplicity of the cleaning team, something deep and irreversible changed in Sophia's penetrating look. A silence determination iosa and mortal that his arrogant oppressors could not realize. It was being methodically fueled by the venomous superb who tried to impose as absolute truth. There, in front of all those condescending glances laden with privilege and superior smiles soaked in prejudice, she remained motionless as a sphinx that holds 2 powerful millennial secrets to be revealed before the right time arrived. If you are enjoying this story of twisting and poetic justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what this simple and limited immigrant was quietly preparing to completely rewrite the history of that company, and the brutal lesson that these arrogant executives were about to learn their lives forever and ever. The next day, Richard arrived at the office even more arrogant than usual. The meeting with the Indian client would take place in 6 hours, and he still did not have the translation of the mysterious document. But that did not worry him. After all, he had delegated the task to his team of language experts, who charged a cleaning lady for a monthly salary. "Any news about the Sanskrit document?" asked Sarah, who had passed the dawn researching emergency translators. "I got contact with 3 university professors, but everyone said they would need at least 48 hours for a precise translation." Richard laughed with contempt. "Sarah, you're complicating a simple situation. It's just an old text. If it were really complex, our consultants would have resolved yesterday." Throughout the morning, Sophia observed the growing excitement on the executive floor. Phones played incessantly. Assistants ran through the corridors with document stacks, and the tension was palpable. The 15 million contract depended on that translation, and Richard was beginning to sweat cold under the impeccable Italian suit. "Marcus, you studied Latin at college," said Richard, clearly desperate. "Latin and Sanskrit must have some similarities, don't you? Just need an approximate interpretation to impress the customer." Marcus shook his head nervously. "Richard, Sanskrit is completely different from Latin. It's like comparing Mandarin with Portuguese. They are writing systems, grammar, and totally different concepts." Around noon, Sophia noticed something that made her deeply disturbed. As he cleaned Richard's room, he heard a telephone call that revealed the true character of the man who had spent 3 years systematically humiliating his team. "Dr. Peterson, I'm Richard Thornton of Thornton Global," he said on the phone, using his most professional tone. "I heard that the Lord dominates old languages. How much would it charge for an urgent Sanskrit translation? 5,000? Perfect. But I need a special condition. I want me to tell me that the translation is extremely complex, impossible for anyone without specific doctorate." "Exactly. I need to confirm that it is an academic miracle to have managed to translate."
Why? Sophia felt the blood boil. Richard was not just paying for the translation, he was paying to humiliate his own team, creating a false narrative about the complexity of the document to justify his prejudices and keep everyone in his proper places. "Yes, Dr. Peterson, you can say that it took it all night working on it. The harder it seems, the better for my argument."
At that moment, Sophia understood that she was not just dealing with casual arrogance, but with a deliberately cruel man who used his position to destroy the self-esteem of the people he considered inferior. He was a psychological predator disguised as a successful executive. At 3 in the afternoon, Dr. Peterson arrived at the office carrying an aged leather paste. Richard received him with exaggerated pomp, ensuring that the whole team, including cleaning staff, was present in the lobby to witness the academic miracle that was about to happen. "Dear employees," announced Richard theatrically, "I want you to see what true intellectual excellence means. Dr. Peterson, an emeritus teacher in Oriental Studies, worked all night to decipher this impossible document. Something yesterday people, simple, they could never understand." Dr. Peterson opened the folder nervously. "Well, Mr. Thornton, I must admit that this document presented unique challenges. The grammatical complexity and the philosophical concepts involved require years of specialized study to be properly understood." Sophia remained at the bottom of the lobby, observing the cruel staging with growing indignation. Richard smiled like a hunter displaying his prey, clearly pleased to be educating his employees under its intellectual limitations. "As you can see," Richard continued, "questions of this magnitude are beyond the capabilities of people who have not had access to elite higher education. That's why we pay experts, such as Dr. Peterson, $5,000 for a few hours of genuine intellectual work." It was at this moment that something irreversible changed inside Sophia Mendoza. It was no longer just about translating an old document or earning $1,000. It was about exposing the systematic cruelty of a man who used knowledge as a weapon of social oppression. Each arrogant word that came out of Richard's mouth was being carefully engraved in his memory, and a plan began to form, a plan that would reveal not only his intellectual competence, but moral rotten hidden behind those expensive suits and framed diplomas. While Dr. Peterson continued his elaborate performance on the intellectual impossibility of the translation, Sophia discreetly ran her cell phone in her uniform pocket. What Richard didn't know was that she had recorded every word of the telephone call that exposed her cruel scheme, and that was just the beginning of something much bigger than he could ever imagine. That night Sophia couldn't sleep. Each Richard's arrogant word echoed in his mind, but not in pain. With a cold determination she recognized as heritage of her guerrilla grandmother. It was time to stop being invisible. The next morning Sophia arrived at work 2 hours earlier. He needed time to execute the first phase of his plan meticulously elaborated during the night insone. While the building was still empty, it discreetly accessed the reception computer, an old machine that executives never imagined that someone in cleaning could operate. What Sophia discovered in the company's archives made her simultaneously nauseated and energized. Internal emails revealed a systematic pattern of discrimination. Candidates with Hispanic surnames were automatically discarded for executive positions, Black employees were consistently evaluated less independent of performance, and even existed an informal list called disposable human resources, where its own name was. Interesting, Sophia murmured, discreetly photographing each document with her cell phone. 3 years of sudden humiliations made sense now. It was not incompetence or chance. It was a deliberate corporate policy of keeping certain people in their proper places. Around 7 in the morning, Marcus arrived at the visibly nervous office. The meeting with the Indian client would take place in 2 hours, and Richard still completely depended on Dr. Peterson's translation, who had charged $5,000 for a scam to humiliate innocent employees. Sophia, called Sarah, the executive secretary, interrupting her thoughts. I need you to clean the main conference room with extra care today. We have a very important meeting with international investors. Sophia nodded silently, but for the first time in 3 years, she did not lower her eyes submissively. Sarah noticed the subtle change in the posture of the cleaning lady, but could not identify exactly what had changed. At 8:30, Dr. Peterson returned to the office carrying an elaborately false translation. Sophia observed from the conference room door, while he handed over the document to Richard, who received him as if it were pure gold. Perfect, Dr. Peterson. 5,000 very well invested dollars, said Richard, examining the typed pages, and I'm sure this will serve as an excellent educational example for my team about the importance of academic specialization. It was at this moment that Sophia made a decision that would change everything. He discreetly approached the table where Richard had left the original Sanskrit document, pretending to clean the glass surface. Excuse me, Mr. Thornton, said Sophia for the first time in 3 years, addressing the CEO directly. Her voice was calm, but there was something different from her, a silent authority that made Richard lift her eyes from her cell phone. Yes, he answered distractedly, clearly bothered to have been interrupted by a cleaning employee. This document you're holding on, can I take a quick look? Richard laughed with disdain. Sophia, this is an old Sanskrit text, extremely complex. Dr. Peterson worked all night to translate. It's not something you could understand. I understand that, Mr. Thornton, but still, can I see? The room was strangely silent. Marcus, Sarah, Dr. Peterson, and 2 other executives stopped talking to observe the unusual interaction. Richard hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the unexpected attention the situation was generating. Of course, why not? Finally said, extending the document with a smile only condescending. Maybe it's educational for you to see what a really academic text is like. Sophia took the roll with reverent care, her eyes rapidly through the Sanskrit symbols. An almost imperceptible smile touched his lips, the same smile that his grandmother made before defeating arrogant colonels with sharper than bullets. Interesting, she murmured, turning the page. Very, very interesting. Richard crossed his arms, clearly having fun with what he considered a moment of involuntary comedy. Something wrong, Sophia? Did you find any mistake in Dr. Peterson's translation? What happened next would forever change the dynamics of that company. Sophia lifted her eyes from the document, and for the first time in 3 years, Richard Thornton saw something in the eyes of a cleaning employee who made him question everything he thought about intelligence, social class, and real power. It was the dangerous calm of someone who was about to completely rewrite the rules of the game, using the intellectual weapons themselves their oppressors thought to have exclusively. Mr. Thornton, said Sophia with a voice that carried 3 decades of refined education, can I ask a question about this translation? Richard laughed nervously, realizing that something in Sophia's posture had changed dramatically. Of course, Sophia. What would you like to know about ancient Sanskrit? Well, Sophia continued, still holding the original document, Dr. Peterson translated this verse as, wisdom blooms where humility finds knowledge, right? Dr. Peterson nodded quickly. Yes, exactly, a very complex philosophical phrase about the nature of human wisdom. Sophia smiled, not the submissive smile everyone knew, but something completely new that made Marcus swallow hard. Interesting, because this text is not philosophical. In fact, it's a chicken curry recipe. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard blinked several times as if he tried to process impossible information. Sorry, what did you say? A recipe, Mr. Thornton. Very specific, by the way. Add saffron when the onion golden, season with cardamom and serve with basmati rice. It is from the 18th century, from a cooking book from the Kerala region. Dr. Peterson paled visibly. Richard looked at him with growing panic. Dr. Peterson, this is impossible. You said it was extremely complex, philosophical, because he lied to the Lord, said Sophia calmly, taking her cell phone out of her pocket. Just as you lied to us yesterday. The phone screen showed an audio recording. Richard's unmistakable voice echoed through the room. Dr. Peterson, I want you to tell me that the translation is extremely complex, impossible for anyone without specific doctorate. I need to confirm that it is an academic miracle. Richard tried to get the phone, but Sophia walked away gracefully. Mr. Thornton, this is just a copy. I have backups in several safe places. You can't have recorded it. It's illegal, I stammered Richard, the sweat starting to appear on his forehead. In fact, it is completely cool to record conversations in a workplace when discrimination is suspected, Mr. Thornton. Article 42 of the Labor Code. I learned this in my doctorate in comparative law. Marcus fell heavily in a chair. Doctorate? Sophia, do you have a doctorate? 2, in fact. Comparative and Linguistic Literature from the National University of Bogota and International Law from the University of Delhi. I speak 7 fluent languages, including classic and modern Sanskrit. Sarah triggered frantically into her tablet, clearly researching the credentials that Sophia had just mentioned. Richard, she is right. Dr. Sofia Esperanza Mendoza Gutierrez, summa cum laude in both programs, had articles published in... Shut up, Sarah, Richard exploded, but his voice sounded more desperate than authoritarian. This is impossible. You're a cleaning lady. People like you don't... People like me? Sophia interrupted, her voice keeping her calm. People like me, Mr. Thornton, who according to their internal emails are disposable human resources? She slid a folder on the table. Inside, copies of dozens of discriminatory emails, fraudulent reviews, and the famous list where its name was disposable. Where did you get this? Whispered Marcus, recognizing some of the documents. 3 years cleaning computers gives access to a lot of interesting information, Mr. Marcus, especially when people forget to logo of systems that contain evidence of systematic discrimination. Richard tried a last desperate card. That proves nothing. You have invaded private systems. Sophia smiled and removed a second folder, thicker than the first. Mr. Thornton, I am a PhD in international law with specialization in corporate crimes. Each document mention I collected was obtained during my authorized cleaning work on computers left open by users' negligence. Everything perfectly cool. Dr. Peterson tried to get out of the room discreetly, but Sophia interrupted him. Dr. Peterson, you will want to stay, especially when I tell the Association of University Professors as you accept money to create false translations designed to humiliate immigrant workers. Please, Dr. Peterson begged. I need this money. My research. Your research on linguistic discrimination? Sophia opened her laptop, professional equipment that definitely did not belong to an ordinary cleaning lady, because I have a copy of your doctoral thesis here. Very ironic that someone who writes about linguistic prejudice accept money to perpetuate exactly what condemns academically. The room was now absolute silent, except for the sound of Richard's heavy breath. In 15 minutes, his perception of power, intelligence, and superiority had been completely destroyed by a woman he considered invisible. $1,000, said Sophia, extending her hand. I believe you made a bet yesterday, and as I translated the document correctly, unlike Dr. Peterson, I won. Richard's hand trembled as he took his wallet out of his pocket, but what truly terrified him was not to lose $1,000. It was realized that for 3 years he had systematically humiliated one of the most intellectually superior women he had ever known, and that now she had enough evidence to destroy her job not only, but her all-professional reputation built on arrogance and prejudice, disguised as competent. With the $1,000 in hand and enough evidence to process the company for systematic discrimination, Sophia did not end there. In fact, that was just the beginning of something much bigger than Richard could never imagine. Before leaving, said Sophia, closing her professional laptop, I would like to inform that I accept the resignation I know is thinking of giving me, Mr. Thornton, but I also want to communicate that I just sent copies of all these documents to the Justice Department, Civil Rights Commission, and 3 local newspapers. Richard tried to get up, but his legs trembled. You can't do that. I will sue you for... Why exactly? For exposing documented crimes of racial and labor discrimination. Good luck explaining this to a jury, especially when you know that you paid an academic to create false evidence designed to humiliate immigrant staff, Sarah interrupted nervously. Sophia, maybe we can talk about it. I'm sure there were misunderstandings. There has been no misunderstanding, Sarah. You have a literal list called Disposable Human Resources where names from all non-white employees of the company are. This is not an accident, it's corporate policy. Marcus tried a different approach. Look, Sophia, we all make mistakes. How about we discuss adequate compensation to solve it in a civilized way? Sophia smiled, no longer the submissive smile everyone knew, but the smile of someone who had completely recovered her dignity. Compensation? Mr. Marcus, In 2 hours I have an interview at Williams & Associates, the largest international coast international consulting firm. They offered me a position as Director of International Relations with starting salary of $200,000 per year. The silence was absolute. Dr. Peterson had disappeared discreetly during the conversation, but Richard remained paralyzed, processing the full dimension of the disaster he had created for himself. Like this? I stammered. Richard, you can't simply, just what? Being successful despite the systematic obstacles you created? Mr. Thornton, in the last 3 years, while clearing your offices, I have also kept in touch with old academics. I published 4 articles on discrimination in the corporate environment, using this company as an anonymous case study. Sophia opened one last folder. My research caught the attention of Williams & Associates, who was looking for someone with practical experience in identifying and fighting institutional prejudices. Ionic, isn't it? Richard finally found his voice but sounded broken. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you keep working here if you had all these qualifications? Because I needed evidence, Mr. Thornton, and because my children needed financial stability as I methodically documented each discriminatory act of this company. You provided enough material for 3 years of academic research on corporate racism, Sarah typed frantically. Richard, the company's shares have fallen 12% in the last 2 hours. Keynes are receiving leaks on an imminent investigation. That, said Sophia casually, keeping her documents. I forgot to mention that my cousin works in the financial press. Apparently, stories about CEOs paying to humiliate immigrant employees are very popular among socially conscious investors. Marcus was visibly pale. Sophia, please, there has to be something we can do to solve it without destroying the whole company. The company will not be destroyed, Mr. Marcus. It will only undergo a very necessary cleaning. In fact, I hear that Williams & Associates is interested in purchasing some of your best customers when you get into financial difficulties. Richard fell heavily in his executive chair. In less than an hour, he had lost a $15 million contract, exposed his company to criminal proceedings, and found that the most despised employee was actually more qualified intellectually than himself. One last thing, said Sophia, stopped at the door. That $1,000 offer, I will donate to the local immigrant education fund. After all, Mr. Thornton, true revenge is not to destroy who harms us, is to achieve the success that our oppressors could never imagine. 6 months later, Sophia Mendoza was promoted to vice president at Williams & Associates. Richard Thornton lost his company after federal investigations, and today works as a freelance consultant, earning in a year what Sophia earns in 2 months. Dr. Peterson had his academic title suspended and faces ethical processes. The most powerful lesson in this story is not about revenge. It is about how true intelligence and dignity always triumph over arrogance and prejudice. Sophia has proven that no matter how invisible try to do you, when you know your own value, no one can decrease you permanently. If this story of overcoming has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave it in the comments. Have you ever faced discrimination at work? How did you react? Always remember, the best revenge is the success your oppressors never imagined you could achieve.